policy as well. Right. But let's start with what happened last week. You've now lost 2 MPs to the Liberal Party. Both have pointed to your leadership as issues. Michael Ma saying that he was more interested in unity than division. Is this a problem of your leadership at this?
No, it's a problem of Mark Carney's leadership that
he's interested in unity over division while dividing the party that gave him a seat in Parliament. That's golden. That's amazing.
After Canadians clearly rejected a costly Liberal majority because they knew it would mean higher grocery prices and higher food costs, he is trying to manipulate his way through backroom deals to get that majority.
He's allowed to do this, though, right? Floor crossing is allowed. You've benefited from it.
But he's trying to take a majority, a costly majority, that would drive up the cost of living and enrich Liberal elites, of course, but not through democratic means. My message to Mark Carney is that if you want a costly majority government to drive up taxes and deficits, then you have to go to the Canadian people and have them vote for it, not do it by dirty backroom deals.
I mean, I know you don't like it, and we can talk about the merits of floor crossing and whether it should be allowed, but it is allowed. This is something that is allowed to happen. So back to my question, is this a sign of a weakness in your leadership that 2 members of your caucus have left?
No, it's a sign of backroom dealings that will drive up the cost of living. And don't take my word for it, take Mr. Ma's word. This is what he said just a few weeks ago. We are in a shameful situation in this country where over 2 million Canadians are visiting food banks every month. At the end of every month, paychecks are not going far enough. Why is that? I'm quoting. Yeah. The Liberals want to deflect and blame this solely on the trade deficit. However, there's a simple economic fact. When we create more units of currency and map them into the economy that is not meaningfully producing more goods and services, we get inflation. As a case in point, in the last 5 years, I'll just finish up his quote. Yeah. In the last 5 years, grocery prices have risen more than 20%. He blames that on Mark Carney's deficit, and that was only a few weeks ago. So
it's possible he didn't write that, though, as we know. Many of your MPs, many of your MPs are given talking.
They were his words. They were his words.
Okay, so
what? You know what? He was right in them when he said that, and it was, but he.
There you have it, guys. Today is Monday, December 15th. My name is Miloš Krajčnik. Welcome to Canuck News. I have really 2 stories. Articles that I want to cover today, but what they really cover a wider flaw that I think that I believe is happening in Canadian politics right now. Is we have this floor crossing, this systematic, opportunistic floor crossing that's happening in Parliament. Obviously, we have the 2 Conservative MPs that crossed, Chris d'Entremont out of Nova Scotia and Michael Ma. We also had Matt Jean-Roux that resigned, so that's obviously not a crossing, but he left. So just another weakening of the Conservative Party. The framing that all of these liberal mainstream medias are framing it as Pierre Poilievre is incapable of running a party. He's a tyrant. He's this and that. People are not satisfied with him. And then you also have, and I'm going to start calling Mark Carney Blackrock Carney, because he is now hiring his Blackrock buddy, Mark Wiseman, to be the ambassador for the U.S. If you ask me, this is just going to open the floodgates to mass corruption. Quite literally, Balkan level corruption is what I foresee happening with the Liberal government in the next period, and it's systematic. And what does all of this floor crossing mean? And that's just one part of it. It's quite literally an erosion of our democratic system. Obviously, it's not illegal, but there needs to be some kind of systems in place that if an MP wants to cross floors, there has to be like a re-election or like some kind of a referendum for those constituents if their representative wants to cross floors, whether they support that person doing that or not. Because if you're just allowed to cross floors, then you can just play everybody, right? People are pissed off, and they have a right to be pissed off. And just to get into the article quickly here, it says, potential disaster looms over Pierre Poilievre's leadership. And see how they're framing that? potential disaster over his leadership. As if he's to blame that people are leaving, right? It's not that these people are dicks, right? They're not assholes screwing over their constituents. It's Pierre's the problem, right? He's a tyrant. He's so bad that we're going liberal. That's how bad Pierre is. So they go, losing one MP to the Liberals may be regarded as a misfortune. Losing two smacks of carelessness. Now Pierre Poilievre's Conservative leadership is really in danger. Even a victory in the upcoming leadership review in January won't necessarily make it safe. Now Mr. Poilievre will be looking over his shoulder and into the shadows. Maybe one more of his MPs will defect before party delegates convene in Calgary to vote on his leadership. Or just after he wins. Liberal House leader Steve McKinnon declared Friday that there are other dissatisfied Conservative MPs. He might as well have sneaked up behind Mr. Poilievre and shouted boo. That is how things have changed since Thursday night when Markham-Unionville MP Michael Ma announced he is leaving Conservatives and crossing the floor to the Liberals. This is exactly it, guys. This is exactly it. There's no checks and balances for people crossing floors, especially in this opportunistic moment. They waited, at least Michael Ma waited exactly when it was most convenient for him, to seize power. So he's not in politics to actually help Canada. He's in politics to make a bigger dollar, right? He's in politics to make a bigger dollar. Why? Because Mark Wiseman, the Blackrock guy, is going to be the ambassador to the US. What kind of deals are going to be made? Who else, like Stephen Guilbeault, has shares in private capital companies who are going to benefit from federal funding? Who else? It's Blackrock Carney and his buddy Blackrock Mark Wiseman. Really? It's opening the floodgates to corruption, and so we're looking at voters who are arguing, whether this is a question of liberal or conservative, but the real power in this country is moving. It's moving upwards. Carney is consolidating power. He's quite literally consolidating power. This is a standard textbook thing that dictators do. Quite frankly, they hire their buddies and then they poach people to consolidate power. They erode democratic values so that voters are just going to say, what does it matter what does my vote matter anyways? If my elected official can just leave, why would my vote matter? So Mark Carney is acting more like a dictator right now, consolidating power than a democratic official. And again, floor crossing is legal, but these are the moves that dictators typically make. You can't just be installing personal friends, honestly. Especially when this person has no political affiliation. He is quite literally just a businessman. And not only any businessman, BlackRock, which we know is riddled with various affairs, if you will. But that's the frame. These two MPs are leaving, and suddenly it's a potential disaster, right? But the framing carefully avoids the more uncomfortable questions are, why are floor crossings normalized in the first place? Why is it normal? It's not normal for the people that voted for these politicians. Like, members of parliament are not freelancers. They're elected under a specific party banner with a platform. And these voters wanted these people, they consented to these people to represent them, not to switch parties when it was convenient for that specific politician. Our democratic values are systematically being eroded by the Liberal Party, by Blackrock Carney, and probably soon by Blackrock Mark Wiseman. This democracy isn't working. It's not working. This isn't how this is supposed to function. They're managing it. And then the more you manage, the more poaching is going to happen. The more pressure is going to be placed here, the more pressure is going to be placed there. And then you're going to get another 10 years of Justin Trudeau. And this is basically, guys, this is just so you guys understand, this is basically a continuation of Blackface Justin, because Blackface Justin, he was a child of the World Economic Forum. He did their Young Leaders program. And we know that Blackrock is a staunch supporter of the World Economic Forum. One of the biggest financial institutions in the world is a supporter of the World Economic Forum. That's where Justin Trudeau came from. And then Mark Carney came from BlackRock. And then he was also the governor of the Bank of England, who is also just knees deep in BlackRock and all of that stuff. And now our ambassador is going to be a BlackRock guy.
This might shatter some sort of an illusion for you, but it is the fact. As much as the media and the Liberal government currently wants you to think that there is something so horribly wrong with Pierre Poilievre's leadership, you know, that guy who actually had a historically high percentage of popular vote amongst the Conservative Party, that guy who is totally winning with youth, as well as totally winning by getting 25 seats in the last election, which is very significant. Conservatives really just don't like the direction he's going in. He's just so far right. Go take a look at a Liberal policy platform from the 1970s. Yeah. And tell me that again. But it's interesting because a lot of people seem to fail to realize that there are all kinds of people who get into politics, right? And to me, there is nothing shocking about somebody who is an opportune politician, aka they have a good representation in their riding, they want the paycheck, they want the power, and so they run as a conservative, but they're not actually political. They just do that because they know that they can win. There's a lot of those. And so to have somebody like Michael Ma cross the floor, there's a lot of weird stuff going on in that riding, first and foremost. Joe Tay, anybody. But that's not the craziest thing to me, actually. Because if you are not ideologically conservative and you ran under the conservative policies and platform of which you were literally still defending in Parliament up until a day ago, and then you choose to cross the floor, that has nothing to do with Pierre Poilievre, whom you ran under. That has everything to do with the fact that you're not ideologically motivated. You're motivated likely by money, by ego and pride and power. And you were in an election, you thought you were going to win, you didn't win it, and now you're stuck and you don't have the power that you really wanted to have. So yeah, you're going to go and cross the floor because you don't actually care.
Exactly. And I said this in an earlier video. A real conservative would never cross the floor into the Liberal Party. Just because it's so ideologically different from what you stand for. You cannot be a conservative and then in your right mind go and be a liberal. Like, it doesn't make sense. They're polar opposites. The names of the two parties are quite literally polar opposites. So these people that are crossing floors, they do not care about democracy and democratic values. They just don't. And so personally, I think that we should have some, tighter, I don't know, checks and balances regarding floor crossing in general. It should really be up to the constituents to see if that politician should carry their votes into a different party. I want to play this. This is a bit of a longer clip. I might play half of it. And I want to play this because it ties into all of this future corruption that I foresee coming through with Mark Wiseman in these backdoor deals. All of this BlackRock stuff.
Andrew, what concerns you about this, other than the fact that it hasn't really been talked about a lot and it was just sort of dumped in there?
Well, there's a reason why these things are called Henry VIII clauses, because they essentially allow government ministers to govern without Parliament, to ignore, it gives them free rein to do things that Parliament, without the backing of a parliamentary
Like what? Give
law.
people an example of
well,
what
in
could
this
happen.
particular case, it's to exempt an entity from any law that they choose, short of the criminal code. So it's breathtakingly wide-ranging, and basically for any reason they choose, where there's some very vague parameters set around it. But there's an authoritarian streak more broadly running through this government, as there was through the government before it, as there was through the government before that, and before that. It's a common theme, liberal or conservative, is abusing Parliament, running roughshod over individual rights. In this case, we've got a government that has been passing omnibus bill after omnibus bill, depriving refugees of the right to an independent hearing, opening the way to warrantless access to subscriber information. So this is of a piece with that. And the long and the short of it is more power for the powers that be and less power for the average citizen.
What is, I don't know if you know this, but what is the understanding of why the government feels they need this? Like, is there some justification for it that would...
Why? Power.
Yeah, so it's a little
considering.
bit more limited than I think how Andrew's framing it. But first of all, okay. So I think it's important to say this was not in the copy of the budget that we were given in the lockup.
In the print one, yeah.
It's buried in Annex 5, which is not included in the print copy of the budget.
Oh, not in the print copy, okay.
And it doesn't actually say, it just says that they're amending the Red Tape Reduction Act. So when you look at what's actually in the bill, what they seem to be trying to do is to exempt a company, a person, an unregistered company, an entity, as Andrew called it, that from laws that are in place to allow for the testing of a product or a service or a regulation, which is a law.
Red tape. They want to get rid of the red tape. Is that the idea?
Well, so to allow for something that would make the economy, and this is in the law, help the economy or innovation, or like these are very broad parameters.
Sure.
And when I asked the governments, I went back and forth with them for a week to find out, like, what is it that you're, this seems a little weird. Why do you need this? And like how, like, what, can you give me an example of how it would be used? And they basically told me that, well, it's to sandbox. So if there's a test, like for example, with drones, there was a law in the book that said that the pilot has to be in the plane. So they had to create like a separate regulation so that they could test drones.
Okay.
So they already had the toolkit and to be able to do this. So why do they need these wider, grander, more elaborate powers? I never got a response from the department. I never got a response from the ministry. And the answers that have been given in the House of Commons when other MPs have since raised it do not address the issue. So we don't know. And I think that's why Andrew and I are really worried about the slippery slope.
Quickly, and then maybe Chantal is less worried. I don't know.
The intent may or may not be about spurring innovation, et cetera. But the language of the bill is any minister, any law for which that minister is responsible, they can exempt it. It's not about, it doesn't, the language of the bill doesn't say just for the purposes of sandboxing and experimentation, et cetera.
Well,
And that's it, guys. That's it. You have this bill being annexed, right? You have this big bill being annexed. All of these major infrastructure projects are being pushed, right? They're being pushed. They're pushing this so that the ministers can essentially veto anything that they're going to do whatever the hell they want. They don't care. And then you have BlackRock. You have this guy, BlackRock Mark Wiseman, being put in place to facilitate or to broker deals with the U.S. He's going to be the ambassador to the U.S., right? So it says Canadian financier Mark Wiseman has officially been selected by Prime Minister BlackRock Mark Carney to take up Canada's most important diplomatic role, ambassador to the United States, as Ottawa prepares for tough USMCA trade talks. Two sources say the appointment was approved by Cabinet on Thursday, the sources said, and the Prime Minister is to make the announcement in the coming days. One of the sources said the Prime Minister chose Mr. Wiseman as close friend because of his extensive business connections in the United States. President Donald Trump and key advisors such as Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick would also respect Mr. Wiseman's financial background. No one cares about your financial background. What the Trump administration cares about is if they can make a deal, if it's to what degree it's going to benefit the U.S. That's really what they care about. You can be anybody. and gain the respect of Donald Trump. Quite literally. Like it quite literally doesn't matter. Viktor Orban, a country of Hungary, a country of 10 million people, who hasn't put oil sanctions and energy sanctions on Russia, has the greatest respect of Donald Trump in the U.S. Administration. So it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You need to be a pragmatic person. Mark Wiseman might be a pragmatic person. I don't really know. I just know that he's from Blackrock. And what I do know down here is where it... So it goes, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre told the House Monday that Mr. Wiseman is someone who has shown contempt for Quebec and cannot negotiate for Quebec. Dominic LeBlanc, the minister responsible for the Canada-US trade, said the Century Initiative's call for 100 million population is not government policy and never will be. I skipped over it a bit. Mark Wiseman he's an executive at the Century Initiative. So all of this mass immigration that's coming into Canada that they're saying isn't official policy but is technically kind of being policy is from this Century Initiative. So what are we doing? What's happening? Right? And so the Conservatives also noted that Mr. Wiseman has been quoted as being opposed to supply management, arguing that it inhibits productivity. It says LeBlanc told the House that we will not negotiate supply management with the Americans, even though Mr. Trump said he wants the Canadian market to be more open to imports for farmers. And so this guy, here we go. Mr. Wiseman shared a social media post in May 2023 that said 100 million may not be federal policy, but it should be, even if it makes Quebec howl. And so what are we actually going to get with this man, right? This is the real question. What are we going to get with Blackrock? And Blackrock, it's not controversial because it's successful, right? Shopify's successful. It's not controversial. It's controversial because it's the largest asset manager in the world, asset holder, and how deeply its power is entangled with actual state power. And this is across the entire Western world. So they're doing it in the US, they do it in Europe, they do it in Canada. And BlackRock has advised governments during the 2008 financial crisis. They meddled with the whole COVID era stuff with the vaccines. They were a part of that. They held massive positions in everything in the same markets, and they affected those same policies. So its executives have literally shaped central banking, bond buying programs. Like, this isn't small fry stuff. They've also been accused by the US states for pushing ESG policies through financial pressure rather than democratic lawmaking as well. And what did we see as well with Stephen Guilbeault? And I keep reiterating this. Stephen Guilbeault, the Liberal that left after the Memorandum of Understanding with Alberta was signed, had shares in Cycle Capital, a company that was benefiting from federal funding for ESG programs. He's a shareholder in that. And that company made that money directly because of him. He even, when asked about conflicts of interest, he openly stated that he was a part of it. And the government did nothing. The government did nothing. This is why I'm saying this level of corruption, this unprecedented level of corruption that's going to be happening in Canada is already building up. And I think this BlackRock bench is going to be an unprecedented level of corruption that's going to be happening. I'm not saying that Mark Wiseman is corrupt, not yet at least, but he is a product of a system that is increasingly insulated from voters and consequences. There's no checks and balances with these people. And so this is really where the floor crossing and the ambassador story are colliding, right? They both weaken democratic accountability. They both concentrate power upwards into one centralized place. And they both signal that elections are temporary and governments is going to be permanent and the elites are going to be managing it. This literally means that trade policy that affects jobs, farming, supply management, and manufacturing is going to be filtered through global finance priorities. It means that regions like Quebec and rural Canada are asked to trust representatives who have openly dismissed their concerns. And it means voters are treated as spectators once the ballots are counted, right? Because they don't matter, because people are just going to leave, right? They're gonna leave when the opportune moment shows up, right? Political norms have failed, and when floor crossing becomes routine like this, democracy is eroded. Our cabinet oversight failed when personal loyalty replaced institutional fit, right? And our foreign policy transparency has failed when Canadians were told this was just pragmatic. Have a business person. Let's have a business person. It's pragmatic, right? Not what is Canada's national strategy, and let's focus towards that. This guy's going to erode manufacturing, even worse. We're just going to be Canada's just going to be Wall Street. It's not even going to be Bay Street anymore. We're just going to be Wall Street. Institutions are going to benefit, the elite networks are going to benefit, and the voters are not. Canada is going to be left in a deep state hellhole, is my thinking. I believe that right now the pattern is clear. The power is moving quietly, accountability is fading, and voters are just going to be expected to accept everything in the name of stability. And we're not going to know what's happening. This is all I have for us today, guys. Hope you guys liked today's episode. Stay informed, stay curious, and God bless Canada.
This is Canada. Maple syrup and like cabin say. Kick your ass all hockey season,